All right, welcome to another webinar offered from the 28 Days of OLLIE through AEAPD Online. Today's topic is all about starting a school-wide program for online or blended learning. And we have some experts joining us here to have a conversation with us. What we'll do is got some questions to kind of have the conversation started. And if you are wanting to ask any questions of these folks, just go ahead and type it in the chat. Or feel free to speak them out, and we'll make sure to include you in the conversation too. So why don't we go ahead and get started. I'll do a brief introduction and then have each of you kind of share a bit more about yourself. We have Dominic Giegerich, who is a principal at Cam High School. And we have Nathan Ballagh, who is an associate principal at South Polk Junior High. And Cale Roe, who's student services consultant for Iowa Learning Online. So we will go ahead and have each of you guys introduce yourself a bit more. And what I'd like to have you do is just kind of share a bit about what your organization, what your school is doing right now for online or blended learning, just to kind of give us a sense for what you're already doing. So Dominic, why don't we start with you?
All right, like I say, I'm at the high school, 912. Several years ago when Evan and others started the different OLLIE programs and created some of the blended learning, we talked to our teachers and sent teachers to the original communities of practice meetings. And right now, currently, one of those teachers is still in the building. So he's been utilizing that program. We have a Spanish teacher who, from day one, when she got her computers, developed her own curriculum online, and her whole curriculum is online. And it's a pretty classic, very I would say high-level blended learning environment. And then we've always had a Moodle server at our facility and available to our entire district, and we have people utilizing that in various degrees. So right now we don't have necessarily an overall program, but we have pockets of really good things going on in the blended environment.
Good. Why don't we head over to Nathan? Explain a little bit about what's happening in your school.
Sure. Again, my name is Nathan Ballagh from Southeast Polk. I work at the junior high as associate principal, and I also taught at our high school for 7 years. So when I was teaching, I started practicing blended learning myself, and I too took some courses facilitated by Evan and learned about Moodle and all the great things it can accomplish in an educational setting. So when I was teaching, I introduced that to our entire high school staff, which is around 120 teachers in the high school, and we committed there. Then I switched roles, came over to the junior high as administrator. They had already started to use Moodle. They were ahead of the high school a little bit. So then we've started really getting people on board there. We've seen this year alone, I think a lot of our teachers are really starting to utilize some of the newer features of Moodle and some of the assessment features and just a blended approach in their classroom. And are having some success with it. The assessment, ongoing formative assessment is probably one of the biggest ways that our staff uses Moodle, and they like the quiz option and what it can do for the multiple levels of learners in their classroom and giving them some choices and the content they learn. We also, as a district, we have a subscription to Edgenuity, and we use Edgenuity grades 6 through 12, and we use it in a variety of ways. As some supplemental classes for like Spanish and French at the middle school level. We don't teach that as a subject. We also use it for credit recovery or kids who are medical homebound, just a variety of reasons. But our teachers went in and used their core curriculum and developed our classes in there as well. So we use blended learning at multiple levels here.
Okay, good. Thank you. Cale, let's head over to you.
Hi. So I'm the Student Services Consultant with Iowa Learning Online. We recently expanded. We're the Department of Education program. We offer more than 40 high school classes to school districts around the state. Schools decide to partner with us and then enroll their students in our courses. All of our courses have Iowa licensed teachers, And we use Moodle for our LMS. We use Genius for our student information system. And we've just really kind of expanded from having a staff of about 8 teachers to a staff of well over 30, and working with 66 high schools just this fall, and I think probably 80 schools this spring has been a real big expansion for us. So we've had looking at everything from our curriculum to our student services processes and how we engage students online and how we track assessments online, both formative and summative, and how we communicate among our teachers and with our coaches in the local schools, how those different groups communicate and help the students to achieve has been it's been a really fun time being involved in the expansion.
Thank you, Cale. I just see, too, that we have Ann Wiley has joined us. She's the Instructional Technology Coordinator at the Johnston schools. Ann, could you just do a bit of an introduction for us and tell a little bit of how you're using blended learning or online learning in your setting?
Sure. My role is a pre-K through 12 Instructional Technology Coordinator, so I primarily work with curriculum and professional learning for our teachers, anything dealing with online learning to anything really that plugs in with technology is what I help teachers with. All of our high school courses, grades 10 through 12, they all have an online presence. We do use Moodle. We've been using it for probably about 6 years in hopes that we would go one-to-one, and we did. 3 years ago, we went one-to-one, and it's been having an online presence really was critical when we went one-to-ones. Our 8th and 9th grade building also has presence for nearly every class on Moodle as well. So teachers are using it obviously for the normal things people would use Moodle for, is resources, forums, links, presentation documents, but they're also using it to pre-record their focus lessons, and then they've been posting their focus lessons as well.
I think what we'll do is I'll toss out a question, and then whoever wants to answer, feel free to hop in. Talk a little bit about, as you were going along the steps of incorporating either blended or online learning, or maybe those kinds of frameworks, what have you learned along the way? What are some things that have happened that you've learned from? What experiences have you had with that as you're thinking about starting before you had what you have in place now to today? What are some things that you could share with our participants?
I can start. The one thing we try to do in working with our staff is setting expectations for how Moodle is going to be used, whether by the students, the parents, by the teachers, or professional development. So setting those expectations and working with our teachers and committing resources and time for them to learn how to best use Moodle so we can maximize instruction time and maximize communication with parents as well.
I would agree with that. I mean, we spent quite a bit of time on teacher expectation of how we would use it, and then put the time behind that to help teachers. Right now, since we're in like year 6 of using Moodle, we still have continued to have professional learning experiences with that online tool. I think that's critical to keep the continuation of professional learning. So we've kind of changed it up a little bit and gave them more options in their professional learning around that, but it's an expectation to continue to use it and enhance the learning of kids with it.
Yeah, and I think you both hit on 3 of the major things: expectations, giving the time during professional development, and then the third being the options. Once you get past that beginning stage, there's some people that always kind of need the more basic level approach, but more people need the upper level and move forward. So those 3 things are critical.
We've had some success when trying to implement either a new tool or a whole new system of starting with a smaller number of users to help work out those initial kinks. And it can also be really powerful to get that initial teacher feedback that can often clear out the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 complaints that teachers may have as they first explore a new system. And those can be mitigated or planned for. And you just get some of the kinks out, because it doesn't matter whether you're gonna, just looking at adding, a new tool in Moodle, checklist or whatever it may be. Getting that early teacher feedback, we've had a lot of success being able to roll it out then to the whole staff more successfully.
I would say too, I kind of forgot about this because it was 6 years ago when we started the whole online content. But we had all of our teachers, before we would set up a course for them in Moodle, they had to participate in a Moodle's driver's permit course that I created. So they all had to pass out of that. And so they needed to, we thought it was really important that they experienced what the students were going to experience. So we set up, different, all the tools in Moodle that they had to actually, post something, and they had to participate in a forum. And they just had to take an online quiz that has the timer flashing at you through the whole quiz and things like that. So before we would set up a course for them, they had to pass the permit. And I would say, looking back, there was some grumbling by some teachers that they had to do that. But looking back now, I think most of them would say that was pretty critical that they experienced that first.
So if we're kind of thinking back to when you first started online blended learning programs at your school or your organization, why did you want to do that? Why would a school be looking at incorporating something like this into their current setting, how students are learning? Why would as a school want to incorporate blended or online learning? What are the benefits that you see?
For us, it was student engagement. As times are changing, we wanted to find more ways to engage our kids in the learning. And we were starting to get more and more devices in our building. And we wanted to use them for something more than just typing papers or things like that. So we wanted to move some of the activities that our teachers have been doing in a traditional classroom setting for a long time. And in order to engage and pique the interest of our kids, move it to an online environment with the forums or the chats or the online review sessions or quizzes or video tutorials. A lot of our teachers are teaching their focus lesson too, so I'm glad Ann brought that up, and that's been huge. Parents have really appreciated that too, because if their kid goes home and doesn't know or didn't understand the concept they learned in class today, many of our teachers have recorded that focus lesson, and the kid can watch it and get that instruction again, and the parent or whoever's there to help can support them as well. So we wanted to extend our instruction, our learning beyond the typical school hours, and get as many resources and information into our kids with obviously the goal of improving student achievement.
Yeah, I think that, go ahead.
I was just going to ask Nathan a question when you mentioned focus lesson. Does your district then use Doug Fisher's work for guided instruction? Okay, just kind of clarifying.
Sorry, I got different light issues here. I think that having the access and the availability of whether it's just posting resources, which I think most teachers start out doing, finding different ways to have the students engaged, and then ultimately moving to the more traditional blended where you are posting your lessons or resources along those lines that allows a student to learn or go back and review as needed. Those were the main points.
With Iowa Learning Online, one of the things that we talk to schools about and we really work on with teachers and our students is having students learn complex communication and learn how to get work done with other kids over a distance. So being able to go online and build those skills to be productive, to be accountable, to be able to monitor your own learning, and then to be able to share your knowledge and demonstrate your knowledge. to your peers and to your teacher. Is one of the things we really focus on in our program. It's one of the reasons that we do semester-based, so that we can have a coach together. So we really try to show that online can really be a new way to connect kids to each other, but then also to the outside world and to those 21st century skills that they're going to need in college. They're going to need when they get a job, have their HR training, they have their training modules online. It's not just for college, it's also for the workforce, but it's things kids deal with today. And those type of skills can be a really powerful driver for an online program.
Talk a little bit about if I'm going to go into a classroom in your building, what am I going to see the teacher doing with the online system? What are the students doing? Give us a picture of how you've decided to incorporate that into your buildings. And it may be very different depending on which teacher's classroom you're in, but give us a picture of how this is being used in your current setting.
Well, I'll go ahead and start. In our building, I'll take our Spanish teacher, for example. The one thing I've noticed, and this also goes to our science teacher, is the students come in and they almost initiate the class before they're, we do still have bells and things like that, but they get down, they open things up, and there's something that's there that they're either following up on, or they know for the first 10 minutes we're going to be in Spanish. They do Duolingo, where they're listening and recording and practicing those things, and that's one thing. And then in her class, there's maybe an introduction and some work, and then they go to they're creating something. And the nice thing, I sub into a lot of classrooms as a principal, and it's not anything special for me. I can just go into that classroom and she'll probably have emailed just a few small instructions, and they're working, and it maximizes and makes that class time so efficient. It's crazy.
I would agree with that. I would say a typical classroom would be that the kids come in, they're plugged in right away, of course, to their devices, but based on what they did with the focus lesson or what they learned online, they jump right into either a discussion or productive group work or some other activity that's a little more engaging than watching the teacher go through the lesson again. I think that's pretty typical. Communication and collaboration is huge with this online learning, so there's a lot more of that happening in our classrooms because of the presence of an online tool to be able to do that.
It sounds a little similar to what you see here at Southeast Polk in the classroom. We are not one-to-one, but many of our classrooms, we have classroom sets of Google Chromebooks. So in those classrooms, it wouldn't be uncommon for you to see the kids come in and get a Chromebook and log into Moodle, and maybe they're completing a bell ringer or something tied to the previous standard being taught the day before. Then we're also focusing a lot on multi-tiered systems of support, or MTSS, and how we can differentiate our instruction at the core instruction, or tier 1. So we're focusing a lot on differentiation. So some students may take different pathways, and we guide them with those pathways of learning through our district benchmark pre and post tests. So after students take a pre-test, we kind of know where they're at with their level of understanding of what we're teaching, and then we'll kind of guide them down a certain pathway to try and get them towards proficiency. And they may complete a different series of activities compared to another student in their class. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes there is differentiation going on there, and sometimes students are completing the same task. But we have teachers using it for a variety of ways, and we have a couple teachers using a flipped classroom model as well. So you'd see pockets of that in our building as well.
I've got some specific questions. My background is as a media specialist, so I want to talk about film and video. Do you observe, or have your teachers had in service talking about using film as a background, but also as using it proactively as a writing prompt? Can you tell me a little bit about how how they use media resources and what kind of in-service they get on that.
I'm not sure we've had any real specific professional learning around that, but it's been part of it. It's been part of when we've done professional learning on productive group work or focus lessons. I think the use of video and images, either one has increased exponentially with focus lessons and in the kids' projects. I mean, they're all wanting to use something like that or create their own. So I'm not sure we really ever had a specific professional learning around that, but it's always been embedded into the other topics that we've used.
Our media specialist does a great job at sharing those types of resources with our staff. We give her time in professional development to share things like Brain Pop or other kind of online media things that could be plugged into the Moodle, into their Moodle sites, or to support the instruction that's going on. Like Ann mentioned, those may be a focus lesson when our kids are in stations working. Maybe their focus lesson is a Brain Pop lesson or some other type of media resource.
And right now, our media specialist would be more traditional, and we rely on our AA person, Judy Griffin, to come in about once a quarter in terms of making some of those connections and getting some of that training. So
we have video services from Discovery Ed that our teachers are able to use in their courses. We also use software called VoiceThread, where our world language teachers are able to create audio prompts for our students as well that they can respond to in kind.
I had a workshop yesterday and a new definition of databases. There was two of them. One, that databases are the new texts, TEXTS, and second, they're the sandboxes for inquiry. Both are rather intriguing ways to think about it. So I appreciate your responses to that question. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Panel, let's say that a school is considering starting a school-wide program, either a group of teachers or there's some administrators that are considering that kind of thing. What advice would you give to them as far as first steps to take? How would I go about getting something like this started, and what should I do to have that happen?
I would say the good first step would be to work with your staff, or teachers, your colleagues, or your PLC to kind of figure out what do they want to get out of a blended learning environment. What are their goals? And so you kind of have a common vision of what that'll look like in your building. As far as taking those next steps of getting something like Moodle set up, definitely consult with your AEA. We're fortunate we have a very supportive AEA, and especially when it comes to Moodle, and they manage a lot of our Moodle and host our server for us and take care of a lot of the maintenance. And this is, I believe, our first year of doing that, and that's been such a huge relief and support, whereas before we tried to manage it all ourselves and could get bogged down at times. So yeah, definitely get your teachers' input, be patient, be willing to try new things, and let your teachers be creative. And definitely also inquire with your students, get their feedback as well, and on what they want to get out of an online learning environment.
Would definitely make sure that you have the time and the support for your teachers to get it set up so they're confident in what they're doing. Another thing that we did that I thought was actually fairly successful is we came up with common classes. So we made a group of science teachers, all teachers as part of a common class. They built the class together, and then we copied it out to each one of them. They loved doing that because they had a common base course. I would also say this, that I think an online presence for a course is really, really nice for new teachers who come into your school districts, because they already have, a course that can be copied over to them, and it's got curriculum all lined up, ready to go. Our teachers coming in love that. So I would say that's a real plus to be able to have that, especially if teachers transition to another district or somewhere. We've got to retain the content that they built. And also we've had teachers who have had a Moodle built at another district that we were able to export it out of their Moodle and import it into ours, so they didn't lose anything. So that was really nice too.
Yeah, I just agree with all that, and extending what Ann just said, having anything that's there prior, we kind of started and we were trying to create the wheel, and it was really hard at first until we started finding resources and connecting there, and then that's where it took off.
Yeah, I would just
go ahead.
I was just talking to other schools around and seeing what they do, and really exploring resources, because there are a variety of entry points. With the program, the teacher comes with the class. Some schools want to go start blending, or just getting all of their assignments and assessments online. Some schools want to start by creating their own content, whether that's by a unit or by a whole class. But just to know that there are a variety of ways to start, and that it does not have to be huge. Or a small number of teachers or a small number of goals, but you can start, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming.
One piece of advice I forgot to mention is, if you have a lot of teachers using Moodle, and so in my building, for example, we're having 8-period day, so a student could have up to 8 teachers a day. So that's 8 different Moodle sites that a student or a parent would have to check to get information about what's going on in their kid's class. One thing we found is some consistency on how those Moodle pages look. We want our teachers to have some freedom, but the consistency for the use for parents, if they can go to any site and it looks somewhat similar, so they know how to navigate the Moodle site and find the information they're looking for, that is helpful. When we didn't kind of require our teachers to have a similar theme, my phone is ringing a lot that I don't understand this teacher's Moodle site or their Moodle site. Why are they all different? I can't find anything. I can find on this one. So as much consistency as you can get, I would recommend that.
Well, let's wrap up here with kind of having each of you share the final word. One thing that you'd like to have us kind of remember when we think about, school-wide programs with online and blended learning. And go ahead and share what's one thing, what's your final word for this topic?
Let teachers collaborate with each other on building courses.
Set your teacher expectations, and then from there allow them to have the freedom to further develop those.
Give feedback from kids as much as possible on the technology and on the experience.
There's a lot of resources and possibilities with online learning out there. Make sure you explore them and don't just get hung up on one resource or one format for your class or one tool that Moodle has to offer. There's a lot of great resources. Make sure you explore them and share that knowledge and information with others.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Dominic, Ann, and Cale, and Nathan for joining us today talking about online and blended learning programs going school-wide. Appreciate your sharing your input and your expertise. So thanks for joining us today. And we look forward to having all of our participants join us again for another webinar being sponsored by AEA PD Online as part of the 28 Days of OLLIE. So thanks, everybody.
Welcome.
Thank you.